When Emily left me for her wealthy boss, David, I thought I had hit rock bottom. It wasn't just the cheating that wrecked me. It was the fact that she had gotten pregnant with his child. The betrayal was layered, like a slow-acting poison. We had been trying for another kid before everything fell apart, and it wasn't until later that I learned about her affair. I was blindsided. She packed her things, left Liam and me behind without so much as a real explanation, and disappeared into the glittering world of her new relationship with David. At the time, I didn't know what was worse: watching the woman I loved so easily walk away, or seeing her move on so quickly with someone else. David was everything I wasn't: rich, successful, influential. He had what Emily had always craved. I thought I'd done my best, but apparently it wasn't enough. The days after she left were the hardest. I was left trying to make sense of everything while still being a good father to our son, Liam. He was only 4 at the time and didn't understand why his mom wasn't around anymore. Every time he asked about her, it broke me a little more, but I tried to shield him from my own pain. I had no choice but to keep moving forward, even when it felt impossible. Months passed, and I eventually began to piece my life back together. Liam and I found a new rhythm, just the two of us. I wasn't exactly happy, but I was learning to accept the situation for what it was. Emily had moved on, and I knew that her leaving had less to do with me and more to do with her endless search for the next big thing. David had money, and Emily had always been drawn to that. I tried not to dwell on it, but it was hard not to let bitterness creep in. 6 months after Emily walked out, I got a call that would change everything. My great-uncle, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, had passed away. He was a bit of a recluse, someone my family rarely talked about. I went through the motions of sending condolences, assuming that would be the extent of my involvement. But then I received a letter from his lawyer, informing me that I had been named in his will. I assumed it was some trinket, maybe an old heirloom. But when I met with the lawyer, the truth stunned me. My uncle had left me millions. I had gone from scraping by to being thrust into a world of sudden, unexpected wealth. My financial worries disappeared overnight. But with that fortune came a whirlwind of emotions I wasn't ready for. In the days following the inheritance, I tried to wrap my head around what this new reality meant for Liam and me. We wouldn't have to struggle anymore. That much was certain. I could finally give him the kind of life I'd always dreamed of providing. The future that had once seemed so bleak was now wide open. It should have been the beginning of something good, but there was an unease I couldn't shake. It didn't take long for word to spread about my inheritance. Family members I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out, offering congratulations that felt more like veiled curiosity about how they could benefit from my newfound wealth. But what I hadn't expected was the knock on my door one evening. When I opened it, there she was, Emily. I hadn't seen her in person since she left, and the sight of her standing on my doorstep, looking polished and put together, threw me off balance. She wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the kind of smile you give when you need something. I immediately knew this wasn't about Liam. This was about the money. "Alex," she said, her voice soft, like we were old friends catching up. "Can we talk?" I stared at her, not knowing whether to laugh or slam the door in her face. What did she think this was? Did she honestly believe she could waltz back into my life after abandoning our son and pretend everything was fine? Talk about what, Emily? I asked, folding my arms, doing my best to keep my voice steady. What could you possibly have to say to me now? She hesitated, as if carefully choosing her words. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about Liam. I know I made mistakes, but I want to fix things. We should talk about what's best for Liam. For all of us." I felt my stomach churn. "Best for us?" I scoffed. "You walked out. You left us behind for David and didn't look back. Now you're standing here, acting like we're a family again." Emily's expression softened, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "I want what's best for our son. And with your new circumstances, I think it's time we reconsider our future. Maybe we could give this another shot. I want Liam to have stability, a real family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't even trying to hide it. This was about the inheritance. She had seen dollar signs, and now she was back, hoping to play happy family to secure her place in this new life I was building. The nerve of her. But before I could respond, she dropped the real bombshell. And she continued, as if this were the most natural thing in the world, "I think it would be best for everyone if you were listed as the father on the new baby's birth certificate. It would make things easier for Liam. Don't you think?" The air left my lungs. I stared at her, speechless. She actually wanted me to pretend to be the father of David's baby. I should have known it wouldn't take long before Emily showed up again. It was like clockwork. Just a week after I inherited my uncle's estate, there she was at my front door, all smiles and sweetness like she hadn't ripped my life apart just months earlier. "Hey, Alex," she said, with that faux casual tone she always used when she was trying to worm her way into a situation. It was unsettling how effortlessly she could act as if everything was fine, as if she hadn't abandoned me and Liam for David. "I thought we should talk. About us. About Liam." I stared at her for a beat, waiting for her to drop the charade and reveal the real reason she was here. Emily had a way of turning on the charm when she wanted something, and right now, I knew exactly what that something was. But I wasn't playing along. "What about Liam? You haven't cared about him since the day you left," I said coldly, making sure she knew I wasn't falling for her act. She sighed dramatically, flipping her hair over her shoulder in a way that used to work on me, but now only made my skin crawl. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she continued, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "About family, and I was wondering if we could start over. I made mistakes, I know that, but I want what's best for Liam. For our family." There it was. I waited for the other shoe to drop, knowing full well this wasn't about Liam. She hadn't given a damn about him since she walked out. And then she said the words that made my stomach turn. "I want you to consider being the father of my baby." At first, I couldn't comprehend what she was suggesting. My mind was racing, and I felt the beginnings of disbelief settle in. "You want me to pretend that your baby, the one you had with David, is mine? Are you serious?" I asked, stunned. She didn't even flinch, didn't even blink. In fact, her smile widened, and that manipulative gleam in her eye grew bolder. "It would be easier for everyone, Alex. For Liam, for the baby. We could be a family again, and with your inheritance, we can give them the life they deserve." It wasn't about Liam or this baby. It was about my inheritance. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. The woman who left me for a wealthier man, abandoning her family, was now coming back because I had something she wanted. My stomach churned with disgust. "Are you out of your mind?" I said, my voice rising in disbelief. "You think you can just waltz back into my life and convince me to raise his baby because it's convenient for you?" Emily's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly, switching to damage control. "It's not like that, Alex," she said, her voice smooth. "I'm thinking about Liam. I'm thinking about our future. I know I messed up, but this can fix things. We could give him the stable home he deserves." I felt anger rising, hot and relentless, bubbling beneath the surface. "Stable home?" I repeated, incredulous. "You destroyed his stability when you walked out. You haven't been around for months, and now you think playing house is going to fix that? And you want me to pretend to be the father of a child that isn't even mine?" I could feel my grip tightening on the door handle, my patience running thin. I wanted to slam the door in her face, but I couldn't quite believe she was standing there, saying these things with a straight face. It was a bold new level of manipulation, even for Emily. "Alex, this is about what's best for all of us," she insisted, her voice lowering into a softer, pleading tone. "I made mistakes, but we could make this work. With your inheritance, we could build a future for Liam and the baby. We could be a family again." And that's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't about second chances or love or family. Emily didn't want me back. She wanted my money. She wanted the security that came with being attached to my newfound wealth. And she was willing to use her baby and our son as bargaining chips. "Emily," I said, taking a deep breath to keep from shouting, "you need to leave. Now. Whatever fantasy you're spinning in your head, it's not going to happen. Liam and I are fine without you. And as for your baby, that's David's responsibility, not mine." Her face hardened, and for the first time since she'd arrived, the mask slipped. The sweet, apologetic tone vanished, replaced by coldness. "Think about it, Alex," she said, her voice sharp. "This isn't just about you. It's about Liam's future, too. You can't provide for him the way I can with your money. This is the best solution for everyone." I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman. She thought she could manipulate her way back into my life by dangling the idea of family in front of me, all while using my son and her unborn child as pawns. I had no words for the depth of my disgust. Without another word, I slammed the door in her face. As I stood there, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me, I realized just how far Emily had fallen. She wasn't the woman I had once loved. She was a stranger now, willing to do anything for financial security. And the worst part? She thought I'd be weak enough to fall for it. But I wasn't that man anymore. This time, I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. The conversation with Emily gnawed at me for days. Every time I replayed it in my mind, the same bitter realization sank deeper. She wasn't back for Liam. She wasn't back for me. She was back for my inheritance. It infuriated me how easily she thought she could manipulate me, using Liam and this new baby as bargaining chips to worm her way into my life again. She thought I was still the same guy who'd let her walk all over him, the one who would do anything for stability. But I had changed. After what she put me through, there was no way I was going to let her trap me in her web again. And I knew if I didn't put a stop to this now, Emily would keep escalating. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and go straight to the source, David. I wasn't sure how he'd react when I reached out. I half expected him to blow me off or treat me like an ex-husband jealous of his new life. But if Emily was lying to me, there was a good chance she was manipulating him too. And if she was willing to involve me in this scheme, there was no telling what else she might have planned. I sent David a message, vague enough to pique his curiosity, and we agreed to meet at a bar downtown. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I had to tell him the truth. He deserved to know what Emily was plotting. When I walked in, I spotted David sitting in the corner. He was dressed in his usual expensive, perfectly tailored suit, sipping a whiskey like he didn't have a care in the world. As I approached, I could feel the tension between us already, thick and unspoken. He didn't exactly seem thrilled to be hearing from me, but he waved me over with a guarded expression. "So," David started, his voice cool, "what's this all about?" I didn't waste time. I laid it all out. The entire conversation with Emily, her request that I pretend to be the father of his baby, and her reasoning behind it. My inheritance. As I spoke, I watched David's face change. At first, he was skeptical, like he couldn't believe what I was saying. But as the story unraveled, I saw his expression darken, his posture stiffen. "She asked you to pretend you're the father?" David muttered, his voice low and full of disbelief. I nodded, locking eyes with him. "Yep. She told me it would be easier for everyone." "Easier for her, you mean?" "She's panicking, worried that you'll leave her. And she sees me as her safety net now that I've come into money." David was silent for a moment, staring into his glass. I could tell he was processing, putting together pieces of a puzzle that had been forming for a while. He swirled the whiskey, his face unreadable, but there was tension in his jaw. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "I should have seen this coming. She's been acting strange for weeks," he muttered almost to himself. "I thought maybe it was just the stress of the baby, but this..." I watched him closely, unsure of where this conversation would go. But when he looked back up at me, there was something cold in his eyes. "I'll take care of it," he said darkly, his voice low and final. I didn't press for details. This wasn't my problem anymore. But I knew then that Emily's little game was up. Whatever she had been trying to pull, it was about to come crashing down on her. And while part of me felt a twinge of pity for the mother of my child, the rest of me was satisfied, knowing that for the first time, she would have to face the consequences of her manipulations. As I left the bar, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Emily had been playing both sides, and now, both David and I had seen through her lies. But there was still an uneasy sense of what was to come. Emily wasn't the type to go down without a fight, and I had a sinking feeling she wasn't done causing chaos. The next few days were eerily quiet. I didn't hear from Emily, and I wasn't sure whether David had confronted her yet. But I knew it was only a matter of time before things exploded. And explode they did. A few days later, Emily showed up at my house again. This time, not with the smug confidence she'd had before, but with a desperate look in her eyes. "Alex," she pleaded as I opened the door, her voice shaky. "We need to talk. Please." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Emily?" She took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. "David kicked me out. He found out about everything. I have nowhere to go. Please, I'm begging you. I'm sorry for everything I've done, but I need your help. We can make this work, for Liam's sake. For the baby's sake." The desperation in her voice might have moved me once, but not anymore. I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold resolve. "I'm not your backup plan, Emily," I said, my voice firm. "You made your choice when you left us for David. Now you can deal with the consequences." Her face crumpled, but I didn't budge. I couldn't afford to let her back into my life. Not for me, and definitely not for Liam. "You need to leave," I said, stepping back inside and closing the door on the chaos she'd brought into my life for the last time. As the door clicked shut, I felt a sense of finality settle over me. Emily's manipulations were over, and for the first time since she left, I felt a sense of control. She had tried to play us all, but now she was the one left with nothing. And I was finally free. A week after my conversation with David, things started unraveling for Emily. I had figured that once I planted the seed of doubt, David would demand proof. Emily, as manipulative as she was, had probably tried to talk her way out of it. But David wasn't naive, and a paternity test was inevitable. When the results came back, confirming what we both suspected, that the baby was his, the fallout was swift and brutal. David wasted no time. He called off the engagement, and Emily's carefully constructed plan to secure her future collapsed in an instant. I heard about the breakup through a mutual acquaintance, someone who worked with David. David threw her out. The message read, "He's done with her, man. She's in total panic mode." A part of me felt satisfaction. Emily had finally been exposed for who she truly was. Her game was over, and now she was the one scrambling to pick up the pieces. She had betrayed me, betrayed David, and for what? To secure her future using other people? Well, that future had now vanished. And, predictably, she came running back to me. It didn't take long before Emily showed up at my doorstep again. Only this time, there was no smug grin, no facade of confidence. She was desperate. When I opened the door, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Ryan," she began, her voice shaky. "Please, I don't know what to do." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my tone flat. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, her voice cracking. "But I'm begging you. David kicked me out. I have nothing. I don't know where else to go." There it was, the desperation, the final act of a woman who had lost everything. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it was fleeting. I had seen this act before, and I wasn't about to let her back into my life just because she was out of options. Emily had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. "You want my help?" I said, incredulous. "After everything you've done, you want me to take you back in? Because your plan with David didn't work out?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to explain herself. "I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but I was wrong. Please, Ryan, we can make this work. For Liam's sake." That was the line that might have worked on me once, but not anymore. I looked at her and shook my head. "Liam doesn't need you showing up when it's convenient for you, Emily. He's doing just fine without you. You walked out on him once, and I'm not letting you come back just because things didn't go your way." Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel the slightest bit of remorse. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "I'm not your safety net. You've made your choices, and now it's time for you to deal with them." Emily stood there, defeated, knowing she had no more cards to play. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with a sense of finality that I hadn't felt in months. As I closed the door, I felt lighter, like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Emily had tried to manipulate me, to pull me back into her web of lies, but for the first time, I had refused to be a part of it. I was free from her games, free from her chaos. And most importantly, I was free to focus on the only thing that truly mattered, my son. The day after David ended things with Emily, she showed up at my house again, as I had predicted. She looked like a complete wreck, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her clothes disheveled, and all the confidence she once flaunted now gone. "Please, Ryan," she started, her voice trembling as she stood on my doorstep. "I don't know where else to go. David threw me out, and I have nothing left. Can we please just start over? For Liam's sake?" I didn't even let her finish. The sympathy card, the tears, the desperate plea to use our son as leverage. It was all too predictable, and I wasn't falling for it again. "You think I don't see through this?" I said coldly. "You've ignored Liam for months. This has nothing to do with him. This is about you losing your cushy life with David." Her face crumpled, tears falling even faster. "I've made mistakes, Ryan. I know that, but I need your help. Please, for Liam. Let's just try again." I stared at her, unmoved by the performance. She had played this game one too many times, and I wasn't about to be drawn back into her drama. "You only care about yourself, Emily. You've never been there for Liam, and I'm not going to let you use him to climb out of this mess. You made your bed, now lie in it." Her lip quivered, but I was done. Without waiting for her to respond, I turned and closed the door in her face. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. Emily was finally reaping the consequences of her actions, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. It didn't take long after shutting the door on Emily for her next move to come crashing into my life. True to her nature, she went straight for the jugular, threatening me with a custody battle for Liam. After months of barely seeing him, months of her ignoring our son, Emily was now suddenly claiming she wanted full custody. It was absurd, but I knew exactly why she was doing it. Without David and his money, she needed another source of financial security. And what better way than child support for me? The thought of her trying to use Liam like that made my blood boil. For the past 6 months, I had been the one picking up the pieces after she left. I'd been there through the tough nights when Liam cried himself to sleep because he missed his mom. I'd been the one helping him with schoolwork, cheering him on at soccer games, and giving him the love and stability he needed. Emily, on the other hand, had been too wrapped up in her life with David to care. I wasn't going to let her waltz back into our lives and rip Liam away from me, especially now that her life had fallen apart. So I lawyered up. The legal battle that followed was intense, and Emily fought dirty. Her lawyer tried to paint a picture of me as an unfit father, grasping at straws to make me look bad. But I was ready. I had kept track of everything. Every missed visitation, every time she flaked on her promises, every moment where she had chosen her new life with David over our son. In court, Emily tried to play the role of the remorseful mother, claiming she had changed and that Liam needed her in his life. But when the judge heard about how she had neglected him, how she had barely seen him since she left, and the fact that she only showed interest after she lost her financial safety net with David, it became clear who the real parent was. I could see the panic in Emily's eyes as the evidence piled up against her. She hadn't expected me to be this prepared. She thought she could walk in and guilt trip her way into getting what she wanted. But I had Liam's best interests at heart, and the court saw that. My lawyer, Sharon, was relentless in her questioning. "Ms. Davis," she began, looking straight at Emily. "In the past 6 months, how many times have you visited Liam?" Emily squirmed, trying to come up with an answer. I was busy. My life was complicated." Sharon cut her off. "Busy? So you're admitting you've missed more than half of your scheduled visits?" Emily's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The truth was out, and there was no going back. The court ruled in my favor. I was granted full custody of Liam, and Emily was given limited visitation rights. The look on her face when the decision came down was a mix of shock and anger, but there was nothing she could do about it. This time, she had lost. As we left the courtroom, Emily tried one last time to plead with me. "Ryan, please. I'm still his mother. We can work something out. We should be a family for Liam's sake." I turned to her, calm but firm. "Liam has a family, Emily, and it's not you." I walked away, my son's future secure, knowing that no matter how much Emily tried to manipulate the situation, I had won this battle. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Emily was desperate, and desperate people always come back for more. For now, though, I could finally breathe. I had Liam, and that was all that mattered. The day of the court hearing felt surreal. I walked in, prepared for the battle ahead, knowing this was the moment everything would come to a head. Emily sat across from me, looking polished and poised, her lawyer by her side. She wore the mask of a concerned, doting mother, the woman who supposedly had it all together, who only wanted the best for her son. But I knew better, and more importantly, I had the truth on my side. As the proceedings began, I felt a wave of anticipation wash over me. My lawyer, Sharon, was the first to speak, and she wasted no time cutting through the facade Emily had carefully crafted. Sharon laid out everything, with a precision that was brutal but necessary. The court was shown the evidence. The months Emily had abandoned Liam, the countless missed visitations, the neglect she had inflicted on him while chasing her new life with David. Sharon presented the court with records of every missed call, every broken promise, and every canceled visit. "Your Honor," Sharon said, her voice calm but commanding, "it is clear that Ms. Davis has shown little interest in her son's well-being until it became convenient for her. Her reappearance in Liam's life coincided with Mr. Larson's inheritance, raising serious concerns about her true motives." The judge listened intently, and I could see the cracks starting to form in Emily's calm exterior. She was trying hard to keep up the act, but we knew, that the evidence spoke for itself. When it was Emily's turn to take the stand, she did what she always did. She played the victim. With tears in her eyes, she spoke about how difficult life had been since David left her, how she had been forced to focus on herself to survive, and how she was just trying to rebuild her life for Liam. It was a performance, a well-rehearsed monologue designed to pull at the judge's heartstrings. "I made mistakes," Emily admitted, her voice shaky, trying to evoke sympathy. "But I've learned from them. I want to be there for Liam, and I think he deserves to have his mother in his life." I clenched my fists under the table, biting my tongue as I listened to her lies. The audacity of her claim that she had learned from her mistakes, when in reality, she had only returned after her financial safety net had disappeared. It was almost laughable. But the judge wasn't swayed. He looked at her with an expression that said he had seen this all before. "Ms. Davis," he said, his voice measured, "while I can appreciate the difficulties you faced, This case is about the best interests of the child. The evidence presented shows a pattern of neglect and disinterest in your son's life until very recently. We are not here to litigate your personal struggles, but to ensure that Liam is provided with a stable, supportive environment. Emily's face paled as the judge's words sank in. Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised a hand, signaling that he had heard enough. The court finds that Mr. Larson has provided consistent care and support for Liam throughout this difficult period, the judge continued. As such, I am granting Mr. Larson full custody of Liam. Ms. Davis will be permitted supervised visitation on a scheduled basis, with the possibility of reevaluation in 6 months, provided there is evidence of sustained, responsible behavior. Emily's face fell, her carefully constructed image crumbling in front of everyone. She looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and anger, as if she couldn't fathom that her plan had failed so miserably. I had won, Liam had won, and there was nothing she could do about it. As the court adjourned, Emily stormed out without saying a word, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. I stayed behind for a moment, taking it all in. It wasn't just a victory in the legal sense, it was validation. After everything she had done, after all the manipulation, lies, and betrayal, justice had finally been served. Sharon patted me on the back as we walked out of the courtroom. "You did good, Ryan," she said with a smile. "Now you and Liam can move forward without her hanging over your heads." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past few months lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe easy. Liam was safe, and our future was finally ours to shape. But deep down, I knew this wouldn't be the last I'd hear from Emily. People like her didn't disappear that easily. She'd try something else, I was sure of it. But this time, I was ready. This time, she had no power over me. After the dust settled from the courtroom battle, I began to hear bits and pieces about Emily's life unraveling. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, one that she had caused herself. With the custody fight behind us, I had moved on, but Emily's world was still falling apart. She had completely burned her bridges with David. From what I'd heard through mutual friends, their split wasn't just a simple breakup. It was explosive. The paternity test had humiliated him, and once he realized how she had tried to manipulate both of us, he severed all ties. David wasn't the kind of man who gave second chances, especially not to someone who had tried to play him so blatantly. With David out of the picture and her engagement called off, Emily's safety net was gone. She had no financial support, no cushy lifestyle to fall back on. Word got around quickly about the lengths she had gone to, and her manipulative ways started to catch up with her. Even the friends and family who had once sided with her began to see her for who she truly was. I found out through mutual acquaintances that Emily was struggling to hold down a job. She bounced from one place to the next, unable to maintain steady employment. Whether it was because of her reputation or simply because she couldn't adapt to a life without luxury, things weren't going well for her. At one point, I heard she was living paycheck to paycheck, barely scraping by in a small apartment that was worlds away from the life she had envisioned with David. A part of me wondered if she had ever truly thought this would be her fate. Emily had always been someone who believed she was destined for better things, that the rules didn't apply to her. She had spent so long climbing the social ladder, using people, manipulating situations to her advantage. Yet here she was, the same people she had stepped on now watching her crash back down to reality. It was strange, watching her downfall from a distance. A few years ago, the thought of Emily struggling like this might have brought me some twisted sense of satisfaction. But now, I felt nothing. Maybe it was because I had finally moved on from the hurt she caused. Or maybe it was because I had Liam, and he was all that truly mattered to me. Seeing Emily face the consequences of her actions didn't bring me the relief I thought it would. It simply felt like justice running its natural course. One night, I overheard a conversation at a gathering that truly put everything into perspective for me. A former friend of Emily's was talking about how even her own family had begun to distance themselves from her. They were tired of her lies, tired of the drama she brought into their lives. It was like she had run out of people to manipulate, run out of sympathy. At that moment, I realized just how far she had fallen. Emily had no one left. The people she had once used and discarded were gone. The life she had tried so desperately to build, using anyone she could have propped herself up, had crumbled around her. And while part of me might have felt sorry for her in the past, I didn't anymore. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. The only thing that mattered to me now was Liam. I had fought for him, protected him, and kept him away from her chaos. He was safe, and that was all I cared about. Emily's downfall wasn't my responsibility anymore. She had tried to destroy me, but in the end, it was her own actions that had brought her life to ruins. And now, for the first time in years, I felt free from her shadow. With Emily finally out of my life, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Real, unshakable peace. The chaos and toxicity that had clouded every aspect of my existence since the divorce had lifted. I could wake up without dreading the next manipulation or the next dramatic stunt she would pull. Instead, my focus was solely on Liam, and that was exactly how it should be. Liam was thriving, without the tension of custody battles or the inconsistency of his mother popping in and out. He had begun to settle into a routine. His grades at school improved, and he seemed happier, more carefree. It was like he could finally just be a kid without the weight of our fractured family pressing down on him. We spent more time together, going on hikes, playing soccer at the park, even just having movie nights. Simple moments that felt precious because they were ours, uninterrupted by the drama that used to consume us. The inheritance from my uncle had provided a cushion I hadn't expected. We lived comfortably, but I was careful not to let that change who I was or how I raised Liam. It wasn't about the money. It was about the freedom it gave me. For the first time, I wasn't constantly working late or stressing about bills. I had the time to be there for my son in ways I hadn't been able to before. I could pick him up from school, attend every soccer game, and help him with his homework without the usual pressures pulling me away. But it wasn't just Liam who was thriving. I was too. Without Emily's manipulations hovering over my every move, I felt lighter. The resentment and bitterness that had been gnawing at me for so long were fading. I wasn't angry anymore. Instead, I felt free. Free from the drama. Free from the emotional chain she had tried to wrap around me. Free to build the life I had always wanted. One evening, after tucking Liam into bed, I sat out on the porch with a glass of whiskey, staring at the stars. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about the past, about Emily, about the mistakes we both made, or the battles we fought. I was thinking about the future, what it could look like, now that all the noise had quieted down, now that I had reclaimed my life. I had come to terms with a lot over the past few months. The custody battle, the confrontation with Emily, even the bitter way her life had unraveled. It had all taught me something. I couldn't change the past, and I didn't need to. I had done what I needed to protect Liam and myself. And that was enough. I wasn't going to let the ghosts of our broken marriage dictate my future anymore. Emily's downfall was hers to live with, not mine. As the months went on, my focus shifted entirely to being the best father I could be. Liam needed me, and I wasn't going to let him down. I took on a more active role in his school, volunteering for events, and making sure I was there for him in every way. It was incredibly fulfilling to see him grow, more than just as a student, but as a person. He was becoming a kind, thoughtful kid, and I couldn't have been prouder. In time, I even started to think about what my own future could look like, romantically, professionally, personally. For so long, I had been stuck in survival mode, just trying to keep my head above water while dealing with the fallout of Emily's actions. But now, I had space to think beyond that. I didn't feel the need to rush into anything, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, it would be on my terms. The legal battles, the betrayals, the lies, those were behind me now. Emily no longer had any hold over me, and I refused to let her shadow loom over my life any longer. This was my time now, my time to be the father Liam needed, and to create a life we could both be proud of. As I sat there on the porch, the cool night air brushing against my skin, I took a deep breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wondering what chaos would come next. I was finally looking forward to the life I was building, forward to the peace I had earned. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel hope. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, it's hard to believe how far I've come. The betrayal, the heartache, the manipulation, it all feels like a distant memory. Emily's downfall was her own doing, and I don't feel an ounce of guilt for how things played out for her. She made her choices, and those choices led to her ruin. It wasn't my responsibility to save her. What matters to me now is Liam and the life we've built together. In many ways, inheriting my uncle's estate gave me the freedom I never knew I needed. It wasn't just the money. It was the security it provided, the opportunity to step away from the chaos and truly focus on what mattered. I had always believed I needed to fight for stability, but this was the first time I realized that true peace came from cutting away the toxicity that had been holding me down for years. Liam and I started fresh. He's thriving in school, happier than I've ever seen him. Our bond has grown stronger, and I'm determined to give him the kind of life that's free from the drama of the past. He's still young, but I can already see the confidence building in him, something I'm proud to say I've helped foster. Every time he smiles or laughs, I'm reminded of what this fight was all about. As for Emily, I've let her go, completely. She hasn't reached out since the custody battle, and I haven't heard a word from her or her family. I'm fine with that. She's no longer my problem. The anger and resentment I once felt have dissolved into something much more liberating: indifference. There's no more pain when I think about her, just a sense of closure. Her attempts to manipulate me failed, and now I'm the one walking away, stronger and better off for it. I've started thinking about the future in a way I never did before. I've begun exploring business opportunities with the money I inherited, investments that will secure Liam's future and give us even more stability. I've also been thinking about what it would mean to open my heart again, to find love that's built on mutual respect and trust, not manipulation and deceit. It's not a priority right now, but it's a door I'm leaving open. This time, I'll walk through it on my own terms. I've learned a lot over the past year. I've learned that people's true colors show when they think they can use you. I've learned that standing up for myself doesn't make me selfish, and protecting my peace doesn't make me a villain. But most importantly, I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who truly care for you, who stand by your side, and who make your life better just by being in it. Liam is my family. My friends, who supported me through every trial, are my family. The people I surround myself with now aren't there because of obligation or expectation. They're there because they want to be, and that makes all the difference. As I close this chapter of my life, I feel a sense of relief and gratitude for the second chance I've been given. I never imagined that inheriting millions would change my life in such unexpected ways. But here I am, finally free from Emily's toxic influence, from the lies and manipulation, from the anger and hurt. What lies ahead for me and Liam is a future filled with hope, possibility, and peace. I'm looking forward to every moment of it. And for the first time in years, I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next. Life, as it turns out, is better on the other side of chaos. And for that, I am incredibly grateful.